Hello best learners, this is Mustafa here at Learn with the Best, and we've got an awesome video for you today. We're going to be talking about Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power, law number 18. Do not build a fortress to protect yourself, because isolation is dangerous. First, I'm going to define the law for you, and then we'll look at two contrasting examples from the book. The first is about a great emperor of China named Qin, who built a fortress to protect himself from his enemies. And the second is about King Louis of France, who built an open palace to keep his friends close, but to keep his enemies even closer. Here's the law. The world is a dangerous place, and enemies are everywhere. Everyone has to protect themselves. A fortress seems the safest, but isolation exposes you to more dangers than it protects you from. It cuts you off from valuable information, and it makes you an easy target. It's better to circulate among people, find allies, mingle. You are shielded from your enemies by the crowds. Okay, so once upon a time, Emperor Qin was the first emperor of China, and he was the most powerful man of his time. His empire was vaster and more powerful than that of Alexander the Great. He had conquered all of the kingdoms surrounding his own kingdom of Qin and unified them all into one massive realm called China. But in the last years of his life, few people, if anyone, even ever saw him, because you see, he had dangerously isolated himself in his own fortress. The emperor lived in the most magnificent palace ever built. It had 270 pavilions, all of which were connected by secret underground passageways, allowing the emperor to move through the palace without anyone ever seeing him. He slept in a different room every night, and anyone who mistakenly laid eyes on him was instantly beheaded. Emperor Qin had grown so terrified of human contact that when he had to leave the palace, he traveled in stealth mode, disguising himself with extreme care. On one such trip through the provinces, he suddenly and unexpectedly just died. His body was brought back to the palace in a carriage, with a cart packed of salted fish trailing behind him to cover up the smell of the rotting corpse, because no one was to know about his death. He died alone, far from his wives, his family, and his friends, accompanied only by a minister and a handful of eunuchs. Qin had started off his career as a fearless warrior with great ambition. Writers of the time described him as a man with the heart of a tiger. He could be merciful at times, but more often than not, it was in his commanding nature to destroy a man without batting an eye. It was through his trickery and violence that he conquered the provinces surrounding his own, forging the nation of China. So what caused him to become so incredibly timid and anxious later on in his life? Well, it's because he always had an obsession that someone was out to get him. He built the Great Wall of China to keep people out. He destroyed the religion of Confucius, burning all books and beheading anyone who so much as whispered anything regarding Confucius. He created a lot of enemies and isolated himself due to an extreme fear that someone was going to get him. As the emperor withdrew deeper and deeper into the palace to protect himself, he slowly lost control of his own realm. Eunuchs and ministers enacted political policies without his approval or even his knowledge, and they also plotted against him. By the end, he was emperor in name only, and he was so isolated that barely anyone knew of his death. He was likely poisoned by the same scheming ministers who encouraged his isolation. This is what isolation brings. Retreat into a fortress and you lose contact with the sources of your power. Instead of being safer, you cut yourself off from the kind of knowledge that could greatly benefit you. So never cut yourself off so far from the streets that you cannot hear what's happening around you. Now let's look at King Louis XIV and how he ruled in sharp contrast to Emperor Qin. But before we do that, I need your help with YouTube's algorithm. Please smash that thumbs up button below, because if you don't, then YouTube is simply not going to show this video to anyone else, and that would be a darn shame. Please also subscribe and click on that bell icon, because if you don't, then again YouTube won't let you know when a new video is uploaded. And if you want to transform yourself from a lamb to a lion, then check out my course pinned in the top comment below. I will teach you the tools that you need for success, but you have to actually step up and put the work in on yourself. This course is absolutely not for everyone because the majority of the population are sheep. But for those very few of us who want to walk the path of a lion, this is the course for you. Okay, so let's get back into it. Once upon a time, there was a great king named King Louis XIV, and he had a palace built specifically the way that he had wanted. And what he wanted was for all of the nobility to live with him in his palace with large open rooms so that he could see and hear everything that was going on around him. The palace was a sort of beehive, and King Louis was the queen bee, right in the center of everything. Every morning the king was greeted in his room by all of his children, all of the nobility, and everyone in between who would come and pass through. The morning was organized so that all of the energy in the palace would come and channel through the king. If the king did not like a particular person, he would make it known, and everyone in the palace would start to gossip. This little trick made it easy for everyone to never get on the bad side of the king. When Louis had first come into power at the end of a civil war, the nobility deeply resented the power of the throne and yearned for the olden days of feudalism, when the lords ruled their own lands and the king had little authority over them. So then, the construction of King Louis's palace was far more than a whim of luxury. It served a crucial function. The king could keep an eye and an ear on everyone and everything around him. The once proud nobility were reduced to squabbling like children over the right to help the king put on his robes in the morning. There was no possibility here of privacy, no possibility of isolation. Louis had understood the truth that for a king to isolate himself is dangerous, because in his absence, conspiracies will spring up, animosities will crystallize, and rebellions will stir. To combat this, sociability and openness must not only be encouraged, but they must be formally organized and channeled, the complete opposite of dangerous isolation. These conditions at the palace lasted for Louis's entire reign, around 50 years of peace and tranquility, and through it all, not a pin dropped without Louis knowing about it. So then, what should you do to protect yourself when it comes to enemies? Building a fortress is a big mistake. It becomes a symbol of the isolation of your power, and it becomes an easy target for your enemies. Us humans, we are social creatures by nature, and so power depends on social interaction and the ability to mingle. To make yourself powerful, you must place yourself at the center of all things, just as King Louis did in his palace. All activity should revolve around you, and you should be aware of everything that happens. In moments of uncertainty and danger, it's human nature to want to turn inward. Instead, what you should do is make yourself more accessible. There's a wise saying that everyone's heard of, and it goes something like this: keep your friends close, but keep your enemies even closer. If you like my YouTube content and you want to support me and the creation of more content, then please check out my Patreon link pinned in the top comment below. I upload new videos every Friday for my Patreon subscribers that go deeper into my life regarding the 48 laws. These videos are a bit more raw and untamed than my usual videos here on YouTube. And if you're a patron of mine already, then I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, because it's people like you that truly make all of this possible. I hope you enjoyed this animated video on Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power, law number 18. Do not build a fortress to protect yourself, because isolation is dangerous. And remember, you only retain about 10% of what you learned the first time around. So watch this video through a few times and then come back to it again and again in order to really understand and ingrain all of the material into your mind. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey sweetheart, can you tell me how this sounds? Oh, ha 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 ha.
That sounds cute.
Moo ha 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 ha. Moo ha 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 ha. Oh, jeez. Try that again. Moo Ha 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 ha.